Welcome back, guys. In this video we are going to start talking about the tokens and the actual pieces of authentication. So we're going to use JSON Web Tokens, and there is this good page that pretty much describes them into really great depth, so you can find it over here. And as you can see, this is what JSON Web Tokens pretty much look like. They consist of three different parts. So we have here a so-called header, we have here a payload, and we have here a signature. And we are going to be using some modules for all of these, so we don't really need to worry about the header part. That is going to be pretty much done for us, but we will modify this payload piece. That will be up to us, and this signature is also going to be taken care for us. Now you can click here to learn more about JSON Web Tokens, and one really important piece I would say is inside of the payload. You see we have a term so-called claims, and there are some reserved claims. Now here they only mention a couple of these, but for example this claim over here stands for issuer of this token, and we can set this up ourselves. This claim over here is pretty much expiration date, so meaning how much into the future this token is going to be a valid one. Sub stands for a subject, and we'll also use this one, so you'll see it in action. Audience one we won't use, but we'll use some that aren't mentioned over here. And like, if you want, you can pause this video and read all of this over here if you fancy all of that data. I won't be reading this obviously, but I'll show you like all that's necessary for you to create a web application using the tokens. But of course, if you want more details, this is certainly one good place among many other. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, we need to install that module that is going to help us deal with tokens, and that module is called, you can guess it, JSON Web Token. And now I'll actually show you its GitHub page, so you can also read there more about it if you want. And okay, so this is the GitHub page for this JSON Web Token module. The name over here could be slightly misleading given that it contains this node prefix that I didn't told you about, but as you can see, if you scroll down here in the installation section, you can see that it is actually called just the JSON Web Token. And now you can also read about usage here. It is really in-depth, the guy on this GitHub page. And as you can see, one really important function is called .sign, which is actually used for signing a token, and we'll actually be using this one. There are a couple of more functions, for example, JSON Web Token.verify that is used to verify a token, and also one about decoding a token. Now we won't be using the decode and the verify one because we're going to delegate that part to the passport.js. We're going to use JSON Web Token strategy there. But if you want to do something maybe more manual in the future and you don't want to use the passport.js, you can definitely complete all of your token based tasks using this module. And by the way, you can see here that they also show you the options, and as you can see, some of them matches what we've been able to read on this JSON Web Token site. For example, the issuer and the audience and the subject and expires in, etc. And also, as you can see here, like we could, for example, let's say the expiration date or time, you can see how we can do it. We can just specify the expiration, like shorthand naming convention that we've been able to see here. If you scroll down, okay, they don't show you here, but as you can see, all of these claims are 3 characters long, so we can certainly like specify like this, and then we specify the date. Or using this JSON Web Token module, you can also like don't do it inside of the payload section, but just create another object at the end, and then you can use their syntax, as you can see, expires in, which they specify over here. So it is up to you. Okay, so let's now jump into the code, and I'll quit this long introduction. So what we need to do is to quit our server in case you have it running, and then we want to add this module. So it is called JSON Web Token, like this. And now we need to wait a few seconds. Okay, it's done. Okay, now I'll also start the server immediately so I don't forget about that. And what we want to do is we now want to navigate to these controllers, a user's controller over here, and we want to get a handle on that module that we just installed. So up above, I'm going to actually write that above this. I have a tendency to, like, first of all include all the third-party modules, and then I include all the, like, our custom files. So I'll keep with that tradition, and I'm going to say, well, we can name it however you want, but this is a pretty common abbreviation for the JSON Web Tokens, so I'm going to type JWT equals require and then the JSON Web Token, like this. Okay, and now we can use it. So as you can see here, we had this placeholder comment saying respond with token. Well, let's do just that. So I'm going to put this under a comment, and now let's actually start using this new module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this JWT, and then we need that sign function that it exposes us to. And now this function takes an object, which is pretty much the payload, as you can see here, and it also takes a secret or a private key, which is going to be a string. Okay, so we have this, and so we have this function called sign that is supposed to actually assign this token by us. And over here we have this object which represents our payload, and over here we have our secret. Now this secret over here will actually be used to encode this token. Now encoding and encrypting are two different things, and when I say encode, I don't mean that someone else couldn't see our token. I mean that by using this secret we can actually verify that this token is a valid one and isn't being manipulated by some third party. So that is a huge difference, and I'll actually show you that on one site that we actually visited. But for now, let's start with filling this object over here. So let's start by writing some of the reserved claims. So we have one claim that is called issuer, and this is abbreviation for it. And over here we can simply put our names, or like the name of our server or the site that we're building. So right now I'm just going to put code worker to this field over here. Then we have something called subject, and these are the three letters for the subject claim. Now when it comes to the subject, this is the meaty part. Like, this is the actual piece that will connect this token with this particular user that just signed up. So like, what can we actually use for this subject? Well, if I take a look at RoboMongo, and let me just close all of the other shells, and I take a look at this document in depth, like here are all the values that we have for this particular user. So we have ID, we have email, and we have password. So we can use any of these values to distinguish this particular user from any other. Now, if we used email, for example, that would work, but in the scenario in which the user simply changes his or her email, then this token will fail, even though it is actually a correct token. So email is not something I suggest using for the subject. Okay, about password. Passwords also get changed over time, and so that's not a reliable method also, but this ID stays the same. So this ID is actually a perfect candidate for this subject over here. So we're going to use this ID, and what you can actually see is that this ID over here is called by the underscore ID, but we can reference it in two different ways. We can either type new user.id, or we can type new user underscore ID, and they would point to the same thing. So you can check that by typing in the console line, but just trust me that we can access it via this way also. Next we have issued at claim that is abbreviated by these 3 characters, and here we want to specify the exact time that this token was signed. Now this is optional and you don't need to do this. Actually this also is optional, so you can just use subject, but let's do a couple of them so you can see more examples. So what we can use is we can actually use the date portion of JavaScript, so we can generate a new date, and then we can get access to get time, which will return to us a current time, and that's exactly what this claim is supposed to get. Next, we can also set expiration time, so we can say expiration. These are the 3 characters for that claim, and for example we can do a multitude of different things inside of here, but for example let's say that we want to specify the expiration date for this particular token to be like 1 day ahead. So what we can do is we can generate a new date object, and then we actually want to set artificial time, so we want to set date ourselves. And how we can set this date is to actually generate a new date object and get the current date of that object, and then simply increment that by 1 day in the future. So this over here is like the current time, and this over here is the current time plus 1 day ahead, like this. Okay, so this payload section looks really good right now, and now we need to specify something for the secret here that will be used to encode this token. So for the secret, like you would usually maybe generate some long random string and keep it a secret, which is really important for you to keep it as a secret. But for now we can do something fun because this is a learning project, so maybe I want to type something like code worker, authentication, maybe leave it like that. Now this entire function .sign will actually return to us a token in like a string form, so we can actually create a new variable, let's call it token, and let's actually save that return information to it. And now what we can do is we can actually respond with a token like we wanted to do like much earlier. So I'm going to paste this comment over here, and I'm going to simply get rid of this because we don't need that. And over here what we can do is simply go response.json. Maybe we want to set a status of 200, meaning everything went okay. And for the JSON part we maybe want to specify, say, a token and simply pass that token. Now you know me and you know that I like the ES6, so in the similar way we did it over here and over here. Because they are called the same, I'm just going to get rid of the right hand side and just leave it like this. Now let's actually save this and see if this works as we wanted it to work. So this is still running. I'm going to open a Postman, and let me slightly change this email address so that it won't complain that the email is already in use, and I'm going to send this request, and here is our token. So as you can see, it has 3 different parts. So this is one part over here, the second part over here, and the third part over here, just as we've been able to see on that JSON Web Token site. Now one really cool thing that I can show you is if I copy this token, now if I come to this site and I actually replace their token with our token, you can see that we have pretty much the same thing, but we have our own data in the payload section. And as you can see, we didn't need to mess with the header and the signature, but we only needed to focus on this payload section. And as you can see, this is quite readable, so this is in no way encrypted, so we can clearly read everything. The issued at and the expiration dates are saved in this format, and as you can see, this number over here is greater than this, meaning that the expiration will actually happen in the future, and this is the current time, and this subject is the ID of our user. And if I actually open the RoboMongo and I open this document, you can see that it points to this ID over here. So it is in no way encrypted, it is just encoded, meaning that if someone went and actually manipulated this token, our server will notice that this token isn't signed by us, but instead has been manipulated with, and will actually be able to reject it. So that is the whole usage of that secret string over here. So now this looks really good, and this is something that we'll need to do again inside of this sign in function over here. So what we can actually do is encapsulate this into a new function that we'll call both here somewhere and both here. So let's do that. So I'm going to simply go up here and create a new function. Let's name it sign token. And we'll need to pass pretty much just the user, because everything except that subject claim is not really in any way tied to this particular user. So I'm going to expect a user, but I'm going to put this as a fat arrow function like this. So I'm going to expect a user here, and I don't need parentheses if it is just one argument. And then I'm going to cut this entire piece over here and simply paste it over here. And now I need to fix the indentation. And what should happen is we actually need to also return this token so that we can get a handle on it over here. So I'm just going to replace this with return statement like this. And then over here we can actually make a new comment in which we actually generate the token, and we can say const token equals sign token, and we are going to pass this new user in, and then the rest stays the same. Now for the sign in, we need to somehow get access to these users, so I'm going to leave this for the passport.js section, because passport.js will actually allow us to get access to that user using the request object over here. But one thing that we can improve is maybe we don't want to keep this secret over here, because that secret will also need to be referenced in passport.js file that we're about to build in the next video. So what we can actually do is maybe create a different folder called configuration maybe, and it needs to be a top level. And then maybe we want to create a single file, let's say called index.js, in which we can module.exports many different pieces of data. For now we just want to export this JWT secret, so I'm going to say maybe JWTs underscore secrets, and I'm going to cut this line over here and save this. And then in this users file I'm going to actually get reference to that, so I'm going to use the ESX and say JWT secret equals require, and then we need to navigate to that file. So the path is we need to go up one directory and then configuration, and because this file is called just index, we can leave it as is, because this require module will actually, if we just specify the name of the folder, will actually fetch the index file beneath that folder. So this should work. And now we can just use the JWT secret like this. So now maybe we can give it another test simply to make sure that it still works the same with all of these changes. So let's simply do that. The server has been restarted, which is good. Now let me just change the email, and okay, great. So we noticed something bad. New user is not defined. Okay, that is because when we send a new user here, we're actually receiving it as a variable called user, but I forgot to actually change this, so I need to change this user with a new user. And let us try it again. So the server is restarted once again, and if I come here and I can actually yes, I don't think I can actually use the same email, because I think it broke somewhere here and the user has already been created. Yes, exactly that, as you can see. So I'm just going to get rid of that, and now I can use the same email, and we get a token and everything is fine. Okay, so I'll leave this as is currently for this video. We got introduced to tokens, specifically JSON Web Token. We've seen how we can sign it. We talked in great depth about all these claims, and we actually played with this editor, and we have been able to see our own data inside of this. So in the next video we're actually going to install the passport.js, and then we're going to talk more about this sign-in functionality, in which we need to actually verify the JSON Web Token and grant access, and it should be again a lot of fun. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video in which we're going to tackle the passport.js.